Everyone. This is week 2 of our Friday webinar series that we're going to continue at least through the end of September. And it's pretty likely that we may continue this as well. So thanks to Carrie Schumacher for helping us get this organized and sharing it. And we will be sharing these recordings through the Facebook group as well. So if you haven't joined that, or if the others that were participating in the program haven't joined it, be sure to let them know about that so that they can watch it as well. So today's session is going to be Dr. George Haynes talking about small businesses, the COVID impacts and the stimulus, and most importantly, how you can get money from them. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, George.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Joel. And good morning to everybody. The title of this probably ought to be the status of stimulus rather than looking at the COVID-19 impacts and stimulus, but it's become a really important issue from a small business perspective, primarily because farms and ranches have now been included in the small business funding, which was something that's new and unusual for money coming through the Small Business Administration. Let's see here. Oh, I'm unable to advance these slides. Let's see what's going on here a minute. We'll take just a very quick look at what's gone on in Montana, and then take a look at 3 different programs. 2 of them funded by the Small Business Administration, and 1 that's actually handled by the Montana Department of Commerce. The small business impacts are pretty interesting at the moment. If we look at small business revenue in Montana, it's still down about 10% from the beginning of this COVID issue here in Montana. But if you look back prior to March, you notice that the numbers are actually a little bit larger than that. But in relation to the other states in the U.S., we're doing relatively well in Montana. We're down just a little over 10%. If you look at it from oh boy, I'm having some trouble advancing slides. If you look at it from a small business being open sort of story, we're doing about as well as anybody in the U.S. is. We're sitting, right about, still down about 20% from where we would be, in kind of a normal year, but things are progressing. If you look at the farm and ranch economy, and you can blot out that green line that's running across the bottom, because that's the oil industry that went through some really wild price changes, but the rest of it at the very top is all commodities. And if you look at commodities in the U.S., everything is up to about where it was at prior to COVID-19, with the exception of corn and livestock, and I kind of look at feeder cattle prices, which are still down a little bit from where they were before. But things have, there was some changes, and pretty substantial changes actually, as you watch these markets fall, about 20% below. But now they've, basically kind of regained some of their strength as we've moved into the latter part of August and early September. So in terms of what's happened, the Small Business Administration had these programs out there, 2 of them, the Paycheck Protection Program and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, which were really assigned by the U.S. Treasury to the Small Business Administration. And it turned out that farms and ranches became a part of all of that. They became eligible for the Paycheck Protection Program as well as the Economic Injury Loan Program. And the most important part was that both of these programs had components to them that were free money. They were grants that were given to you. And as we'll take a look at in a minute, some of that's disappeared now, but really important sorts of programs for small businesses as well as farms and ranches. So let's take a look at the first of these, this Paycheck Protection Program. Will there be a second round? Well, that's a good question. Certainly that's being debated with Steve Mnuchin and Pelosi as we sit here this morning. There was quite a bit of money put into this program. Almost $660 billion was assigned to this. As of August 8th, which was my birthday, there were still $133 billion of this left in this account, and that still remains about the same as my conversation with SBA a few days ago. The expectation with these loans was that it was all going to be forgiven, and I think that generally will probably follow through, except for businesses that ended up getting some money that really didn't deserve getting any of it. So we'll see what happens. But the money could be used for really three things, primarily payroll, your mortgage interest, and utilities. Although that list of uses for the money has really expanded over time. I think now, as long as it's a reasonable business expense, you're probably not going to get much pushback. So what were the terms of this? Well, there was you could loan up to $10 million. That was, really outside the for most small businesses really didn't need that much money. But what you could essentially do is go out and borrow 2.5 times whatever your monthly payroll was, for the previous year. And then this money would be forgiven. One of the components of this, though, that really kind of flew under the radar was that, there were a lot of businesses out there, especially small businesses and a lot of farms and ranches that don't hire anybody. So what could they do for this? Well, you had the opportunity to submit either your Schedule C or in the case of farms and ranches, your Schedule F, and look and see how much money you made in the previous year. And unfortunately, there was some pressure on you to show some profitability here, but still some opportunity to still get money out of it, even if you didn't have, very high earnings. But let's say here in our particular example that this business had a little less than $50,000 of profit that they were able to show in their Schedule C or Schedule F. You divide that number, in my case, the 48,000 rather than the 50 on my slide, and you get $4,000 per that was eligible for, per month. Multiply that times 2.5 times, and that's the amount of money you could get out of the program. So theoretically, you could borrow up to $10,000. And the best part of this was that you wouldn't owe any of the money back. After 8 weeks had transpired and you followed the rules, you would actually, this loan would be forgiven, so it wouldn't show up, anywhere on your balance sheet at least. So how do you get the money? Well, you go to your lender, and I think there's been a lot of lenders in Montana that have had a lot of interest in this program, some that haven't. But my suggestion to you is, grab your Schedule F or Schedule C, or if you're an independent contractor, grab your 1099s and go talk to your bank. And if your bank doesn't want to give you some money, go to the banker next door and see if they're going to give you money, and so on. And because there is money out there, and perhaps you could have had, some that participated in this program. And states like Montana did really very well in this. The blue states were the winners in this particular program, and the states that are in orange on this didn't do so well. So there was, an opportunity here. The only problem was with this program that, essentially ended on August 8th. So we're now waiting to see what they're going to do with this $130 billion that's still sitting out there. And I think there's some sentiment, but that's all I can say right now, that they'd like to figure out a second round of this. And there's been a lot of talk. So we'll see where this all ends up. No guarantees for sure on where this might end up. Second one of these programs, these economic injury disaster loans, this is a little bit different program because you could go out and borrow money, and then they would give you an advance up to $10,000 in the advance. And then the $10,000 is what would be free money to you. That's what would turn out to be a loan, or excuse me, a grant to you. Well, the loan advance program ended on July 11th. But the thing that's still important in the EIDC loans is that they're available to you till the end of December. But all you're going to get out of this particular program is the opportunity to really defer some loan payments. And you get a relatively favorable interest rate, which we'll see here in just a minute. So how do you apply for this? Well, about anybody can apply as long as you have fewer than 500 employees, and that includes almost all businesses in Montana. You had to be in operation by mid-February, which was pretty standard. And as I said before, you have till the end of the calendar year here to apply for this. You can apply up to $150,000 or for loans of that size. And the terms are okay. You get 3.75% interest. You can amortize this out over 30 years. And if you don't want to make any payments on it in the first year, you don't have to. You defer all the payments. But one of the problems is there's no loan forgiveness here, and there's no advance forgiveness either. And just visiting with other people that are involved in the policy, kind of realm of this particular product, I'm not so sure those will ever come back for EIDL loan, but we'll see. So how do you get the money? Well, you'll talk to your lender again. But in the previous one, in the PPP loans, all I got to do is show up at your lender, and you don't have to really, do anything other than take some paperwork to them. But because you don't have to worry about any of this other stuff, you don't have to give any personal guarantees for it. You don't have to, pledge any collateral. But when you get into the EIDL loans, you have to go in and really negotiate a pretty standard loan. You got to worry about personal guarantees. You got to figure out what collateral you're going to pledge, and they're going to charge you some fees on these things to process them for you. So, it's a little bit different sort of story. SBA still provides 100% of the backing, so the bank doesn't really have any risk with it. So, that's a good thing. You should be able to get some money out of the program. So, what about this? Well, if you went out and borrowed the full $150,000 for 30 years, it cost you about $8,400 a year. If you amortize this out, you can defer that for the first year. But when the second year rolls around, you're still going to owe the money on this particular product. And again, there's nothing other than a deferral and a relatively low interest rate that will attract you to borrow money from the source. Well, the winners here, aren't so much the same states as before. We didn't do a lot of EIDL lending here in Montana. We're down a little bit from what you'd expect. Some of the states over on the East Coast seem to do better with this particular product. So what are my concerns with this SBA programs that are out there? Well, I think there was a lot of money went in areas that were, less impacted by COVID, which is probably true because you have businesses that were heavily impacted, didn't have time to worry about applying for loans. The large publicly traded companies that got their fingers into the trough and took money out of this. And then lastly, I think there was concern about the funding going to businesses that really needed the money. And boy, if you can give some rationale about needing the money, they were really pretty good opportunities for you. But anyway, this is kind of how it all landed. There's also some stimulus that's out there, and these are alive and well stimulus programs, by the way, that are a part of $1.2 billion given to the state of Montana under this several Montana stimulus programs. Here's the website you can go out and look at. We'll come back and revisit that in just a minute here. But there are three programs four programs we'll talk about. One of them we're going to talk about in some detail here, but the one probably has the most potential for anyone is the Montana Business Stabilization Program. The current funding out there is $160 million available. You can get up to $20,000 in this program. But the one thing that's kind of interesting about it, you have to have evidence out there that you have sustained a revenue loss over this period of time, which wasn't part of the federal programs. So you got to take some documentation in. Perhaps if you're in the farm and ranch business, you go and say you sold some grain or some cattle below market, and convince them that you were damaged. And you just need to be a relatively small business. You have to be 50 employees or less to apply for any of this money. The other programs that are out there is a loan deferment program is available as well. But a loan deferment program is not going to give you a whole lot. There's $125 million in this. It effectively lowers your interest rate for you. And it also defers your loan out there for some period of time. Again, you have to demonstrate that you had some damage from COVID, and then you have to, and then it'll allow you to access, a little bit more working capital for your business, just in terms of loans that you might have that are already outstanding. So it helps you defer some interest and also negotiate a little bit lower interest rate on money that you might have already borrowed out, at this point in time. You have till the 18th of September to get in applications for this, and that loan, that program will close. There's some other programs that are out there, but these are very specific to certain small businesses, and unless you happen to, provide be involved in a band or something and also farm, this live entertainment one probably doesn't apply to you, but there's $10 million in that. If you happen to live on the edge of Glacier Park, which might be some of the people, that are certainly up on the Blackfoot Reservation, this might apply to them, or over in Flathead. There's a couple $1 million set aside for businesses in that corridor. And then there's this Montana Business Adaptability Grant, which really is for people that have spent had expenses where they're trying to adapt their business model or what they were doing to what was going on with COVID, and in particular about quarantining people that have been employed by them. So that's a little bit very specific to businesses that have really been impacted and incurring additional costs associated with the virus. So how do you get the money? Well, you don't have to go to your bank. You just need to go to the Department of Commerce in Montana, and you can go to this website, commerce.mt.gov, and business recovery, and there's an application that's available to you right there. And all you need to do is click on this application, and it will allow you to apply for all of these business recovery loans that have been business stimulus loans that have been made available through the governor's office, and they're being administered by the Department of Commerce. So that's kind of it in terms of this summary. And as I said, it's kind of a status of stimulus sort of story. And I think everybody needs to be aware of the fact that, a lot of the stimulus is kind of certainly on the chopping block right now. There's less interest in it than there was before. But we'll see kind of how this all transpires. I think there's a lot of negotiating going on right now to decide whether they want to continue some of this. Again, we'll see what happens with the payroll protection program, as well as the EIDL loans, as well as some of the funding here in Montana. But the money that's available out there currently, that's still there and still available for you to go out and apply for, is really a lot of Montana-based funding. So with that, I'm ready for some questions.
Well, first of all, I'll just invite anybody that's participating today, if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, certainly go ahead and feel free to do that. You can also type in the chat window as well if you've got a question. I'll start George off with one question to give everybody a little bit of time if they want to think of some others. But George, do we know kind of what percentages of farm businesses participated in either the EIDL program or the payroll protection program?
Well, there's some data that's just been made available about a week ago that will allow us to look at the amount of money that end up in, at least in the small farm sort of arena, and that'll be the first data that I will have looked at in terms of trying to ferret out what went to small businesses and then to farm and ranch related businesses and nonprofits. So I don't know the numbers yet. I understood initially that there was not a lot of farm and ranch activity in this program, but I don't have any data to substantiate that yet.
All right, thanks. And I will pause here again. If you do want to unmute yourself and ask a question, please feel free to do that.
Hello, Joel. This is Liz. I missed the whole webinar because something came up. Are these going to be recorded and put anywhere?
They are. Yeah, good question. Thanks, Liz. So we were a little bit late last week. We were figuring out the technology, but the recording will likely be prepared. We'll get the initial link back late this afternoon, probably, well, normally Monday, but this week it'll probably be Tuesday. We'll convert that to a YouTube link and we will post that in the Facebook group. that we created for this. So if you haven't got linked into that Facebook group yet, reach out to Carrie Schumacher and she can help you get linked into that group. And that's where we'll post all the recordings.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'll reach out to Carrie. Thank you.
We learned a little on technology this week. It's a little bit of a learn as we go on how to share that to the Facebook page, but I think we've got a process figured out that we'll kind of follow now going forward. So George, maybe I'll ask one more question. I'm not seeing any yet from the participants, but did we see differences in these programs in terms of, say, Jordan or Circle or one of the more rural areas versus places like Billings or Bozeman in terms of participation?
I think that's been one of the big issues with this program. I think we've seen the areas that have had a little bit more economic development here in Montana, the urban areas, a lot of the money has flown into those markets. And, I think part of that is that you end up with businesses that are there that are very able to go out and go after this money, as opposed to others that aren't. And it kind of reflects itself. Maybe one of the good examples is there's probably a really substantial share of this went to construction companies as opposed to people that are in the food service business or in the accommodations business. And I think that you end up with, people that really do have the resources to go after this money and are, pretty savvy. They use accountants. They're just able to go out and make use of this. And I think that's been one of the challenges in the rural areas. I think there's been just having businesses that feel like they could have the time and the expertise to go after the money, and that's just there was less money into those areas than I would, and probably needed to go there really. It was.
All right, thanks. I'll ask one more time here for any questions from the participants.
No, I will make just one comment. If businesses or farming and ranching operations out there that are looking for some support, be sure and encourage them to go look at the stimulus that's out there, even if they just go look at the Montana based stimulus that's available from the Department of Commerce. I think there are opportunities there, and the unfortunate part is that oftentimes it's just overlooked by people that maybe not just haven't quite, the information hasn't quite reached them. Maybe just give them a suggestion, maybe they ought to go take a look.
And I'm sure, George, is it correct that your banker or your accountant are oftentimes a good first step for some additional information?
Absolutely. Those are exactly the people to go talk to.
All right. Well, I will give folks one more chance here in a minute, but I'll make a quick announcement. The next 2 weeks, we're going to focus on some beef issues specifically. So on September 11th, we're going to have Tommy Bass, who's in our Animal and Range Sciences department, talk about local beef processing and kind of specifically how that might translate into an opportunity for you to market some of your beef locally or regionally, and some kind of the best practices, rules, opportunities there. So that'll be a week from today, September 11th. And then 2 weeks from today, Eric Belasco will join us, and he'll talk a little bit more about marketing cattle, kind of where the markets are, some different options there. So that will be September 18th for Dr. Eric Belasco joining us. So mark your calendars for those. All right. Do we have any other questions or final comments from anyone?
As soon as you send me the link, Joel, I'll get it up.
All right.
Okay.
And it might be Tuesday just because of the holiday and some vacation this afternoon for a couple people. So we'll get that link over and we'll get it posted
Okay,
Facebook.
sounds good. All right.
All right. Well, thank you, George, for taking the time to share with us. Hope you all will join us a week from today, and I hope everybody enjoys their Labor Day weekend.
Great weekend, guys.